Greetings brothers, today we're focused on transports for your Firstborn Blood Angels troops. Let's see how they do in the 9th edition. Welcome to the weekly tactics video. I'm John, the Blood Angels Commander, and every week on this channel we do loads of Blood Angels content. So if you want to see more on your YouTube homepage, then please consider subscribing and remember to hit the bell to turn on all your notifications for this channel as well. Right, so let's get into it, and what I wanted to do today is look at all the Firstborn transport options in 9th edition. So there's actually 10 transports that you can take for Space Marines in 9th edition, and I have previously done a video on the drop pod, so I will not be including that. And we're not going to look at Rhinos, because Rhinos can just take regular Firstborn Marines with no jump packs, and I think one of the things, if you're going to be transporting, you want to transport Jump Marines or Terminators or Centurions, or maybe even some Dreadnoughts, you know, something a bit more with a bit more oomph. So we're going to focus on the other 8 transports, we're going to look at all of them, and hopefully you'll get some value out of the video. So if we start on the Crusader, and it moves forward 10, and that gives your units in turn 2 a very good platform for getting into combat. You know, a 3-inch disembark, a 12-inch jump, and then it's very easy from that point to see them being able to make charges in turn 2. Now, the Land Raider isn't super survivable, you know, toughness 8, 16 wounds and 2+ save, and again, is quite a heavy points investment, but I have been talking a lot about how Psychic Fortress seems to bring an insane amount of value early game to Blood Angels, especially if you do this castle deployment where a lot of your units are essentially castled around the Psyker in turn 1 or turn 2. I mean, in the first couple of turns I feel like it's fine to be together, our armies are so mobile, and I mean this Crusader adds kind of a bit of easy mobility to your Sanguinary Guard or your Death Company or whatever is inside them, right? They're reasonably well protected, and you could fit an 8-man squad in there nice, which I recommend Sanguinary Guard in 8s. Especially, you know, against Blood Angels now, players will actively screen their deployment zone to prevent deep strike, so having this sort of 10-inch move forward from Land Raider, use that as a platform to get out. And the Crusader, you know, it's good at clearing out screens, 2 Hurricane Bolters, a twin assault cannon. I would say it's not bad at all, you know, that's going to be 24 shots minimum, more if you're within half range and stuff. So it can clear out some chaff units, and it can set up a good platform for your jump troops. Now, I've only used a Land Raider a couple of times at the beginning of 9th, and I didn't think it was too bad, but at the time I wasn't using this castle strategy with the Psychic Fortress, so I think using that, I think a Land Raider is very decent. And I guess any vehicle that is going to stay around the Psyker, especially the Psyker who moves 5 or 6, I suppose if he's not in Terminator armor, you advance d6 plus 1. It's very easy for him to keep up and keep that Land Raider protected. So, Land Raider, you know, thumbs up or thumbs down right now. I'm thinking it's possibly a thumbs up. Not super strong, but not bad either. So, Land Raider is an okay pick, I think, in 9th edition. Now, next up is a model I get asked about a lot, and it is the Stormraven Gunship. And, like, it has got some super nice things going for it, right? It's got that 45-inch move if you need it to. It's got 12 infantry, and it can also take 1 dreadnought less than 13 wounds. So when I ran it, I actually put Dante, a 5-man Sanguinary Guard, and a Librarian dreadnought inside. It made my deployment very light, but you know, it's a very good amount of units to be unloading in turn 2, pretty much in range of anything, right? Because 45 inches forward. The one concern with the Stormraven is I don't think it's survivable. Even with that -1 to hit, which is essentially just like a smokescreen, it's only toughness 7 and it's only 14 wounds and a 3+ save, and it's not going to benefit from the Psychic Fortress, right? Because you're going to fly forward, you're not going to be in range of the Psyker. So in a few of my games I've pretty much lost a Redemptor from full health down to like 1 or 2 wounds in a single turn, and bear in mind the Redemptors have 1 less wound, but they do have that Duty Eternal cutting down all the damage. So in the current meta, where there's so many Melty-Guns, I do not think a Stormraven can be fielded. It's 310 points, you know, so it's a bit more than the Crusader that we just talked about, and yeah, for me right now, the Stormraven is a thumbs down. Like, I don't think you can field a Stormraven in 9th edition. I think it's too easy to be shot off the table. Maybe if there was some way of giving it a reliable and vulnerable save, but I don't see how you could do that, in that it's going to be miles away from all your other units due to that 45-inch move, and you want to use the strength of that move. So yeah, Stormraven right now for me is a no-go. And 310 points with the default weapon options. I mean, if you put all the weapons options on it, you're pushing like 370 points. It's kind of crazy. 370 points for a unit that can die in a single turn is a no for me. So third up is the Spartan, and this is a super heavy Forge World tank, and to include it in your army list it's going to cost you 460 points, plus you're going to have to pay 4 CP because it's going to need to be in its own detachment, a super heavy detachment, then you're going to have to pay 1 for Martial Legacy as well. And you know, 4 CP sounds like a lot, but remember, if you can build a battalion, I don't think it's the end of the world to spend the 4 CP if the rest of your troops can be organised into a battalion. Now, the Spartan isn't badly equipped, you know, it's basically got 2 quad las cannons, a twin heavy bolter, it's got those crushing tracks, can do some decent damage in melee, and the interesting thing, I guess, is the Spartan can hold 25 models, 25 infantry. So you're talking essentially like 11 jump troopers and a character, something like that. So I think, you know, you could have a very large Sanguinary Guard with a priest and maybe a captain or something, or you could have a large death company with a chaplain and a priest. You know, there's a lot you could do with the Spartan. It has the same 10-inch move as the Land Raider. It has 20 wounds this time and a 2+ save and also the toughness 8, so a bit more survivable than Land Raider. I mean, you will, some armies probably still, with all the meltas in the current meta, some armies probably will still be able to destroy the Spartan in a single turn. So there may be a slight concern there. But again, you know, it could be, if it's used correctly, if it's positioned well within this castle / psychic fortress that I'm talking about, I think it becomes a lot more threatening and survivable. And yeah, I mean, I already own 2 super heavy tanks. The Spartan is definitely one of the other few that I've looked at and thought this would be pretty great. I mean, if you compare it to the Falchion, which is the one I use, it has the same sponsons and it has the same, you know, twin heavy bolter. The only difference is it's missing its main cannon, but by missing the main cannon you can fit 25 units inside of it. I feel like if the enemy cannot pop that open in turn 1, they're going to have a really bad game, because you can have a ton of stuff spew out of that in sort of early charge distance, and you know, if they don't kill it, then you are returning fire with 8 las cannons as well. I mean, that pretty much what I learned from using my super heavy tank was just don't split that fire, because quite often I'd fire the 4 las cannons at different targets and we'd always end up leaving a couple of models on low health. So just put all 8 las cannons into the same target. You're probably going to overkill, but at the same time you will make the kill, and sometimes it's important to just make those kills. So make your kill, and then go for something else with all the units that are spewing out of it. I like the Spartan. 4 CP to take it. It's okay. You know, I'll give the Spartan a thumbs up. Like, I would field one if I had one, and maybe I will have one in the next couple of years. You know, like I sort of give myself a super heavy project every couple of years to work on. I'm still working on the last one, so stay tuned for that. So while we're on the subject of super heavy tanks, let's just talk about the Mastodon. And this is going to cost you the exact same 4 CP to field, but this time you're going to be 800 points. And this thing is ginormous. You may have some trouble actually on some maps in terms of deployment and also maneuverability across the board, because this tank has the same issue as a Falchion. It's not going to be able to get all around the battle, right? Because it's just such a large thing. Now, the Mastodon has a crazy 30 wounds, and it also has 6 extra wounds from its void shields, and while the void shields are up, it gets a 5+ invulnerable save. Now, each void shield has 3 wounds, and if they're ever destroyed fully by the enemy, then that's the end of them. But if they aren't destroyed fully by the enemy, they regenerate again in your turn. So the first 6 wounds are more difficult to take off, but once they get through them, there's still 30 wounds at toughness 8 on a 2+ save. And again, this could benefit from the psychic fortress and the castle. Again, it's got a ridiculous number of guns on it. Heavy flamers to help prevent it get charged, las cannons, siege melta arrays, Sky Reaper batteries. I mean, for 800 points, you're very committed to doing this. But, you know, I've been fielding the Falchion a bunch of times and it won a bunch of games, and it was only 26 wounds, toughness 8, 2+. So this has 4, potentially 10 more wounds than the Falchion, and some regenerating wounds as well, and a built-in invulnerable save. And here's the kicker, it takes 40 models, 40 infantry, so I guess that would be 20 jump models, or 2 dreadnoughts, and each dreadnought costs 10 of your regular marines. So you could take like an 8-man Sanguinary Guard, a 6-man Sanguinary Guard, and that would get you the 30, and then sorry, that would get you 28, so it leave room for like a character like Dante, and then you've got room for a Librarian Dreadnought in there as well. So you could have your whole golden host inside that Mastodon. You could put it forward 10 inches and you could just say to the enemy, you know, shoot me or charge me, good luck killing me. And while all the fire goes into there, the chances of them killing it in a single turn are pretty slim, I think. You'd have to have a lot of melta-guns to get rid of that in one turn. I would think, based on my own experience, I would, and you know what, we're going to come to Math Hammer in a few minutes, but based on my own experience, I think 2 full Devastator squads coming out of drop pods will not kill that in a single turn if they're all armed with multi-malice. So, you know, you can confidently unload in the middle of the map and sort of fly and jump and make charges all over the board. Again, the Mastodon is one where, like, you know, I've seen some beautiful pictures of them online. I would love one. Maybe one day we'll get one as well. The problem you're going to have is it's such a large vehicle, it's going to struggle to get around the terrain, whereas the previous entry, you know, the Spartan isn't going to have that. It's just sort of a larger Land Raider chassis. So both of these, though, even at their 4 CP cost, I think there's in friendly games, maybe not at a tournament, but at friendly games, you're going to cause your enemy a lot of headache, and you're probably going to do really well. So I would consider fielding one of these for sure. Let's talk about the Terrax drill next, the Terrax-Pattern Termite. And I've only recently fought against Terraxes. I don't think I fought against them at all before 9th edition. And I've been actually really impressed with them. You know, 180 points, they take 12 infantry, they deep strike, and when they deep strike, the infantry can unload, much like a drop pod. So both the Terrax and the infantry need to be 9 inches away from the enemy, but I mean, that's not a problem. And they are toughness 8, and they are 14 wounds, and they're only 180 points. So, I mean, the toughness 8 and 14 wounds, compare it to Land Raider, it's only a couple of wounds left, it's 100 points less. Now, what do you get for 100 points less? Well, you get a little bit less capacity than the Crusader. You know, you only get 12 infantry inside, but you do get the Terrax Melta Cutter, which is basically a 5-shot Melta, which is, you know, Melta guns are a big thing right now. You can't sneeze at 5 Melta gun shots, especially when you can land in deep strike within Melta range. You also get the Termite drill, which is absolutely disgusting, and I didn't realise this. As the Termite loses health, all the way down to 1 wound, his weapon skill doesn't change, right? So it does lose attacks and stuff, but remember, you are Blood Angels, so we do get bonus attacks on charging and stuff like that. But what the interesting thing is it's weapon skill 4, even if it's on 1 wound. And the Termite drill can do basically 6 damage per hit against, you know, most enemies, but I think it's against vehicles, and I need to double check this if it's monsters as well. It can do potentially 9 damage from the drill. Alright, sorry, my mistake. Vehicles, it does D3 plus 3 against everything else, and against vehicles it's D3 plus 6. So a minimum of 7 damage to vehicles, and it's times 2 strength, so that's strength 14 minus 4. And yeah, on its base profile it starts with 3 attacks. So we can still get 4 or 5 attacks here from charging or whatnot. So 5 attacks hitting on 4s, strength 14, so you'll be wounding on 2s. And then minus 4 or minus 5 against, you could even combo this with a null zone, like there could be a Psyker inside this Terrax. That's a very good point actually, like you could have a Psyker inside this Terrax. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot you could honestly do with this. And I've played against them twice now. I think I played against a World Eater's Terrax and an Iron Hands Terrax, and both times I was impressed with, you know, it's a reasonably tough transport emerging in your midst that you have to deal with. It has that melta-gun to pop off nasty targets, and if you do not kill it, then, you know, it will charge you and it will wreck you if even a single hit goes through. You know, like, that's 7 damage minimum against vehicles and 4 damage minimum against, you know, anything else. Yeah, 180 points on the Terrax. You know, if you think about like the cost of a Rhino now, and you compare the Terrax, to me it's like they're miles apart. So right now, 180 points for the Terrax. I think it's a really competitive, interesting option. And I guess if you did want to run like some sort of non-jump infantry, like I guess sometimes Flesh Tearers like to run like just Vanguard veterans without jump packs, or, you know, someone with Gabriel Seth, for example. Sometimes Seth likes to be in a drop pod. Well, him in a Terrax I think there's a lot you could do here with the Terrax, and I'll put it on my shopping list with everything else. My shopping list is as long as it gets for more Warhammer 40k models. Next up is Land Raider Proteus, and I want to tell you a little bit the Land Raider Proteus because it comes in at 255 points and 1 from Martial Legacy, and it can just take 10 infantry. I think the interesting part here is you can spend 15 points to give it heavy armor, and then it gets a 5++ save as well. So it only fits 10, but I mean, in an age where people keep asking me how do you deliver Centurions to the battlefield, well, a Land Raider Proteus would definitely be able to deliver some Centurions, right? In that it's got those extra wounds, it's got that toughness 8, it's got a 5+ invulnerable save, it's also got a couple of twin las cannons in there just for good measure, and I mean, when you compare it to your regular Land Raider, the point cost is much and such. So if you've got a spare CP, I'd almost burn it to take the Proteus, and you know, just I think that invulnerable save on some of these, it's a big difference, especially like we talked about. There's so many Melta guns around. If you're getting hit by Meltas in turn 1 by another Marine faction, you get no save, even on your 2+ save, because you're -5 because of Devastator Doctrine. So you'd be getting a 5+ save. And even if you're getting hit by Meltas from other armies, I think a 5+ save feels a lot better than a 6+ save. You know, for example, in one of the games I did recently, I had to take 6 saves on my Sanguinary Guard at 5 up because of the Feel No Pain, right? Oh, sorry, because of the Psychic Fortress. Now, if you asked me to take, it was 6 saves on 6s. What's your chances of them having a good saving roll? Like, pretty slim, right? If you have to take 6 saves on 6s, you can pretty much guarantee all your models are going to die. I mean, that would be an average. You would roll that probably quite often, and all your models would die. Now, I had to take the same 6 saves on 5+s, and I actually passed 5 of them. Now, it was a good roll, but I mean, it just shows how much difference that just single extra point of save can make, right? You know, like one good roll, and it's like, alright, well, we lost 1 Sanguinary Guard. Whereas just by not having that fortress, it would have been like, we lost all 6 Sanguinary Guard. It's a huge, you know, that's a 200 point swing by the Psychic Fortress. So paying the 15 points on the heavy armor on this Land Raider, I mean, you get less capacity in it, but I guess it would be up to you if there is a way that you could use this Land Raider, like for Centurions, for example, because some people have seen me running Centurions, they want to try this Assault Centurions. They're a pretty fun model to try. Their biggest strength is obviously, their biggest weakness is obviously they don't move hardly anywhere at all. So start them in a Land Raider, get them centerboard that bit quicker. If you've got Land Raider and, you know, this is something you want to try, then, you know, my thought is go for it. You could also even just put an Apothecary in that Land Raider with the 3 Centurions. That fits out 10 really nicely. Just a throwaway Apothecary who could give the Centurions a Feel No Pain. Potentially you could also burn a CP to bring a Centurion back to life if he isn't the Selfless Healer. Maybe you have Sanguinary Priest elsewhere in the map. So for me, the Land Raider Proteus is a thumbs up, but we're not going to look at the regular Land Raider. I think if you want to take a Land Raider, the Crusader or the Proteus seem like the way forward. But maybe you can feel the regular Land Raider as well, but we're not going to look at that in this video. So next up, we'll look at the Stormeagle Gunship. And if you're not familiar with the Stormeagle Gunship, it's basically, it looks a lot like the Stormraven, but it's a forward-rolled model, and it's going to cost you 1 CP from Martial Legacy to include. Compared to the actual Stormraven, it's got some more wounds, but everything else is pretty much the same. The difference is, rather than carrying a Dreadnought, it can just take 20 infantry. So, again, it's really nice. It moves 45 inches. It's got some decent weapon options on it, but it is 335 points, and even with the 4 wounds extra, I'm going to say it's a maybe. Like, the Stormraven definitely has too little wounds to be competitive. I mean, the Stormeagle has like 25% more wounds, so does that make it survivable for turn 1? Maybe. But then it's 335 points, and that's with the default options. You can make it more expensive again for sure. I'm not sure. I'm going to rate the Stormeagle as like a maybe. Maybe you could have it. In terms of competitive play, yeah, it's a big maybe. I mean, you'd have to risk it to try it. But I mean, yeah, I mean, people just always ask me if they can feel these. Maybe you can feel this, but I feel like you definitely cannot feel the Stormraven. And then last on today's list is going to be our Thunderhawk Gunship, and that comes in at 800 points, and it takes 30 infantry. What's interesting with a Thunderhawk is it can also take Primaris infantry, it can take bikers at the cost of 2 spaces, it can take Primaris jump pack, and I guess what it means by that are Inceptors and Suppressors, and it can also take Primaris bikers for 4 slots. So you can put all manner of things into the Thunderhawk. Now, the issue with the Thunderhawk is going to be it's not going to fit on the board, and if it does, you know, maybe it'll fit in a 3,000 point game. It's not fitting in 2,000 point. I would say for the most part. Yeah, I mean it's going to be immobile because you're not going to be able to put it anywhere because it's not going to fit, I think. I mean, I had a look at the weapon options on it, and 800 points. The weapons do look really nice. You know, you get some heavy cannons, and you get the option of like a laser destroyer, which is strength 16 -5, flat 6 damage. You guys know that I love flat 6 damage on these big super heavies. So it will cost you the 3 CP to bring it because it is a super heavy, and you know it's going to cost you the best part of like $600 if you want to buy it. So the Thunderhawk. I'm going to get tongue-tied all today because these aren't models that I run, but the Thunderhawk, for me, I'd love one, and I'm sure a lot of you guys would love one as well, but I don't think it's viable on the board. I think if you really want something super heavy, then the Spartan probably makes the most choice, or the most sense, and it's also going to be the cheapest, but if you could fit the Mastodon on, maybe if you play 3,000 point games often, you could fit the Mastodon, so those are going to be my choices. But the Thunderhawk is cool, and do you know what? The one thing that the Thunderhawk has, which is really nice, is like it can take Primaris models as well. There's no stupid restrictions, and I'm sorry, Games Workshop, if you are watching this, it is a stupid restriction that you can fit Centurions in a Land Raider, but you cannot fit like regular Primaris Marines in a Land Raider. Like literally, I don't know if you've seen Centurions, but they're literally twice the size of a regular Marine, and their arms are like this, so they're absolutely ginormous with the drills. And I guess the same goes for like Impulsors. I mean, I'm fine with the restrictions on the Rhino because the Rhino is a really small vehicle, but on these other big vehicles like Repulsors, like Land Raiders, like I guess even like the Spartan or the Mastodon, these things should be able to carry Primaris no problem. And in fact, I believe in the recent Devastation of Baal book, it was either Devastation of Baal or Darkness and Blood, Dante actually got an Impulsor. So like, you're not on the tabletop, you can't get in an Impulsor, but in the actual lore they've just decided, yeah, this is stupid. Like, Dante is literally a Marine smaller than these other Primaris Marines. If the Primaris Marine can go in the Impulsor, then Dante can go in the Impulsor. So, and Dante's got a jump back as well, so just to add even more confusion to it. But yeah, I like how the Thunderhawk has these options, but I really think that it's time to roll these out. You know, when I was looking at this and I realised that there's 10 Firstborn transports, I was thinking to myself, because there's always a bit of scaremongering about Firstborn, right? Especially like the Blood Angels Tactical Squad recently got like finished. Like, I don't think you can get the Blood Angels Tactical Squad anymore, it's been discontinued. I don't think that they can make a switch to Primaris anytime soon, like exclusively Primaris. If there's 10 transports for Firstborn and the only 2 transports that we have for Primaris right now are kind of junk. Like, the Impulsor was good, and then they removed its invulnerable save and they made it cost more points, and since then I haven't run any Impulsors, and my friends that were running Impulsors have stopped. Sorry, that was about Impulsors, sorry. They removed they nerfed the invulnerable save, and I'm definitely tongue-tied today. But and the Repulsors, no one's running Repulsors. No one's running the Executioners, no one's running the regular Impulsors. They are just so points heavy, and I mean, I suppose now, in my strategy, where I'm castling and I'm using that Psychic Fortress bubble, there's maybe a case for like, Repulsors could survive a few turns and do what they need to do, but the fact they got rid of the core element to it, and you have to take a Tech Marine, like Blood Angels don't typically synergize with a Tech Marine. I'm guessing a lot of other Space Marine armies don't take too many Tech Marines either, so what that means is the Repulsor is just kind of irrelevant at the moment. You know, it's a $50-$60 tank that no one's fielding and everyone's got them.
So, but at the same time, I mean, that's not my original point. My original point is it's stupid that any unit that's smaller than a Primaris Marine should be able to fit in a repulsor or a repulsor, and any of the Primaris units that are smaller than Centurions should be able to fit in anything that Centurions or Terminators can fit in. So yeah, I don't think there's any worry about Firstborn going anywhere if there's 10 transports for them and there's 2 transports for the Primaris, and neither of them are very good right now. So that's just something that I wanted to throw in there based on how I'm feeling at the moment and from building this video. Now, if you are going to take these transports, and these are the big boyos, right, then you're going to have to suffer from explosions. And there's a bunch of different explosions here, ranging from little explosions, I guess, like the Crusader, just 6 inches for d6 mortal wounds, to something like the Thunderhawk, which is going to do 2d6 inches for 2d6 mortal wounds. But even more, the Mastodon, which is going to have a minimum 7-inch explosion for 2d6 mortal wounds. So I guess if you did take a Mastodon in its wraths of death, just make sure it charges the enemy or something. If you luck out and roll that d6, you could annihilate someone's army with those 2d6 mortal wounds. So I've listed all of them here, and I guess the Spartan's actually the same. The Spartan is going to do a lot of mortal wounds when it dies too. And I also kind of thought, if these things are going to die, which is maybe an inevitable thing, if you're going to put a super heavy tank full of your best units on the table, then there's a good chance it would die. What you could do is put 2 company veterans in there, right? Naked veterans, and I guess what I say by naked is just bolt, pistols and chainswords, so 20-point models. So 2 20-point company veterans in there, and if they die, or if the vehicle explodes and you roll some ones, then it's the company veterans that die. No worries, right? So if you have like the Spartan with its 25 infantry capacity, or the Mastodon with its like 40 infantry capacity, you could easily throw away a couple of veterans in there to sort of protect all your other units from sort of any inevitable explosion, if you're worried about it getting killed before it can deliver your payload, so to speak. So with Blood Angel's armies really still consisting so much of Firstborn troops, we do have some things that have started to sneak in, right? And I guess the things that have sneaked in are Inceptors, the Phobos units, Blade Guard veterans, but beyond that, most of our armies are still primarily Firstborn. So with so many Firstborn options and so many competitive Firstborn options, we look a lot at the most competitive stuff on this channel. We cover that week on, week out. So I thought this would be interesting to look at all the transports to try and maybe put something fresh into people's minds. And I don't think there's necessarily anything bad about fielding some of these less run units, right? I mean, if you look at my army lists that I've been playing and I've been winning with, and I've made 2 really strong lists in 9th edition, and one of them included the Falchion Super Heavy Tank Destroyer, and the other one included, Centurions and Redemptor Dreadnoughts and no Inceptors, so it's like I'm not fielding the creme de la creme or the top of the top, whatever you want to call it. I'm trying to field things that I enjoy fielding that synergize well together, and I think, Terminators, Assault Terminators, or even Terminators with Stormbolters inside a Land Raider Crusader, or even, someone last week asked me about Centurions inside a regular Land Raider, or the Land Raider Proteus with the 5+ invulnerable save. Could this be a valid tactic? And I 100% think, yes, it could be. A Land Raider does give you a great base, and in some of my games, at the beginning of 9th edition, I actually ran the Land Raider with like a 5-man Death Company in it. And now I've kind of retired the Death Company and we're bringing Vanguard Veteran Lightning Claws because they're just kind of better. However, the same logic applies in that you could take those Vanguard Veteran squad, the 5 guys, which if you watch my current battles, usually always deep strike, and you could take them and you could put them in the Land Raider. And basically, rather than have to find somewhere 9 inches away to deep strike, and then, a 9-inch charge is never reliable. It's like a 65% with a reroll. So 2 out of 3 games you make the charge, but in 1 game you fail. And when you fail, chances are that squad gets murdered before they get to do anything, potentially, maybe. So, putting them in the Land Raider maybe could just guarantee that charge when they exit 3 inches, 12-inch move in turn 2, plus the 10 inches Land Raider did in turn 1, you're 25 inches forward. Most deployment zones in 9th edition are about 24 away from each other. So basically you're saying at the start of turn 2, you're already in the enemy's deployment zone, you have a free reign to charge. You should probably be able to make that a good position on your troops to have less than the 9-inch charge that you would get from Deep Strike in turn 2. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly something to think about. If any of you are running transports, then please leave me a comment down below of which one of these that you're running. You know, we review community army lists every Sunday, and this is something that we do not see very often, and I don't know why, because really when we went through it, like on things that I thought were decent, you know, we'll say the Spartan, we'll say the Terrax, and we'll say probably the Land Raider Proteus. The Crusader is right on the line, and then the other ones are very situational. The Mastodon, although it is good, I don't know if it's fieldable. But so it basically makes me think there's 3 transports that are probably pretty decent, that can be fielded, that can survive, that can do work. So why is no one running them? I mean, it's not just... Not everybody wants to run the meta. I mean, I know Dreadnoughts are super strong right now, and I know the Inceptors, the Attack Pipes with Multi-Meltas, all these things are super strong. But, you know, let's talk about these things further. And yeah, so to round this all up then, I thought what we'd do is look at the survivability of the units. And I did have 3 slides, which I've looked at, and we've taken all these units, all 7 of them, and we've done what we normally do. So we compare them against bolt rifles, flamestorm cannons, power fists and plasmas, and then after we're going to compare them against the big nasties like the multi-meltas that we talk about. So these are the wounds required to kill. So I factor out the hit rolls. So basically what I'm saying is, if your Land Raider gets hit with bolt rifles 288 times, from the wounds and the failed saves, that will kill it. So if it's going to take you 500 shots to make the 288 hits, then that's what this graph represents. Now, this is especially important when you talk about, you know, like the Stormeagle and the Stormraven, in that they are -1 to hit. So making those 100 hits to kill like the Stormeagle with the bolt rifles will be more difficult than making the hits on another vehicle. However, hopefully you can see in this graph that the Stormraven and the Stormeagle come in quite a lot lower than the other units, and yeah, I think this is just why I think that you can't run them. The Land Raider Crusader does okay. The Proteus, with that invulnerable save, you can see it just sneaking ahead against like the harder things like the plasmas. And you know what, the Spartan is kind of good across the board. You know, like I generally think a Spartan is a pretty useful transport. I think it is the one that sort of bridges the gap, right? You've got your Land Raider here, you've got your Spartan in your middle, you've got the Mastodon way up here, and I think running the Spartan is definitely an option. I think if I had one, I would have tried it by now. Maybe that will be the next super heavy tank that I get. And then the second slide here, we're going to look at las cannons, multi-meltas, thunderhammers, and entropy cannons. So these are really big nasty weapons that are going to do a lot more damage, and multi-melta column would be a good column to look at. So you can see here, you know, your Spartan's going to survive 15 multi-melta after they've rolled the hit. You know, so if the enemy has, let's say, 20 multi-meltas and they've got a 3+ ballistic skill, then it's going to be hit or miss if they can kill the Spartan in a single turn. If you throw in essentially your Psychic Fortress, then they're not going to be able to kill that Spartan in 1 turn, even with 20 multi-melta shots. Now, you can see, you know, the Stormraven is just going to get killed from 6. So if the enemy have, you know, the same 20 multi-meltas, they have some way to add +1 to hit, or reroll 1s, or reroll Chapter Masters, that Stormraven is gonna melt. It's no use at all. The Land Raider Proteus, with its 5+ invulnerable save, you can see there it stands up to the Spartan in terms of multi-meltas. You know, 15 multi-melta shots it can survive, and I think that's one of the reasons that I recommend, like, I suppose if you're really struggling to deliver your Centurions to battle, then the Proteus seems like a really cost-effective way to do that, and it's going to survive well, just in general. Even survives well 12 shots from entropy cannons, or 12 hits, as you say. Sorry, 12 rolls to wound. Yeah. So both slides show you all the survivability, and I guess this is why I've rated some of the things the way I have. Please pause the video and just check through if you want any further details. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I really hope this was a bit of a different video and gave you some thoughts. And maybe, hopefully I didn't make too many of you buy models. Hopefully some of you have your older models that have been not played this edition, and you can bring them back to the forefront. And I think the Land Raider Proteus is basically the exact same profile as the regular Land Raider. I don't think it's for sale on the Forge World site anymore, so I think you can kind of just proxy that, no problem. And you know, the Terrax is actually not bad at all. You know, if you compare its points cost, like I said, you know, here's the thing, the Terrax at 180 points against the Stormraven at 310, so almost double the points. The Terrax is going to be more survivable. Sure, it's not -1 to hit, but like I said, there is ways, it is easier to get around the -1 to hit, so that's something to just consider. I think that, like, we were joking that like maybe 2 Terraxes would be good, but I actually think 2 Terraxes is actually not bad. You know, sometimes people talk about the rule of 2s, right? Like, never take a single Dreadnought, because if you just take one, it'll get killed, whereas if you take 2, the enemy might split their fire and you end up with both Dreadnoughts still healthy and able to do work. And maybe the Terrax is something you could do the same, you know, Death Company in one, Sanguinary Guard in another, or maybe Death Company in one, characters in another, and then Sanguinary Guard join them from Deep Strike. And the 2 Terrax is only 360 points. I generally really like it. So I hope this video will give you some food for thought. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you all in the next video. We will be live on Sunday, and then probably a couple of times next week as well. You can check my schedule at the start of every one of my live streams. By the blood are we made, my brothers. Peace.